Hey everyone, welcome back to my rank and review of the Black Mirror series. Today, we are covering Season 2. If you haven't seen the first video, go and check that out, as I explain the criteria each episode is graded on, and the format and stuff like that. But without any further ado, let's go. Season 2, Episode 1. Be right back. A man is in his car scrolling on his phone. His wife runs through the rain, gets in the car. She tells him to put his phone in the glove box. The car says, "Drive safe," and they head out. They're singing in the car, not paying attention to the rainy road, and we could definitely feel a car crash coming. Somehow, they make it home safe. The man is looking at an old photo of himself and posts about it online, saying how funny it is. Bro is absolutely doom-scrolling right now. He's completely ignoring his wife. She sits down next to him, makes him put his phone away, and they talk about the time of the photo that he's holding. We then get a very inadequate sex scene. Bro busts way too early, as they say. The next morning, they discuss how they're going to return the rental car. Martha says she's very busy with her work, and so Ash will need to take it on his own. Martha is painting on a digital artboard. She's very talented, and the hours pass with no sign of Ash. She tries to call him, but it goes straight to voicemail. Frantically, Martha tries to figure out where he is. She calls the rental company, and they say that the car was never returned. Her sister tries to comfort her over the phone, saying that everything will be alright and Ash is probably fine, but suddenly the police show up outside her door. At the funeral, a woman named Sarah sits down next to Martha. She offers to sign her up to something that will supposedly let her talk to him in order to kind of ease the pain. Martha just crashes out in response. She's going through Ash's things. We can see that their house is an absolute mess. That night, she checks her email, and she sees that she got signed up from the program and gets an email from someone claiming to be Ash. She instantly calls Sarah demanding to be taken off, and then gets an explanation that it uses Ash's internet data to replicate what he would say in any given scenario. She's also been vomiting for the past few days, so she takes a pregnancy test, and it's positive. She feels the urge to talk to someone, but her sister isn't available at the moment, so she hastily goes to her computer and opens the email from Ash. The AI instantly captures his careless wit, and they have a conversation. She laughs at his jokes, and then tells him about the pregnancy. She says that she wants to really speak to him, and he responds, saying that they can. She watches as a bunch of phone calls, videos, and photos are quickly analyzed, and then he says he will call her when it's ready. Not 3 seconds go by, and she gets a call. Once again, the AI captures his personality very well, and it can even tell that she's crying. She's now on a walk outside. She's much happier on the phone with him, laughing, making little jabs and quips. The AI strangely swaps back and forth from acting as if it really is Ash, and recognizing that it's not. He asks her to show her the view that she's looking at, and suddenly gives some fact that it read off the internet. Martha is a tad unnerved by this, and asks him not to do that anymore. She's also dodging phone calls from her mom and her sister in order to spend time with Ash. Martha goes in for a super ultra 4K ultra sound, and wants to record it to show to Ash. She drops her phone on the ground, and it breaks. She starts to panic, thinking that she killed him. Small side note, this all very much reminds me of the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, if you haven't seen that. Once Ash is back online, he reassures her that since he's in the cloud, breaking the phone didn't do anything. And he then mentions that there is another level to this. It's experimental and expensive. Delivery men show up with a large box. She opens it, and we see a strange flesh-shaped mass, shrink-wrapped and covered in styrofoam. Ash tells her to, quote, "get the bath ready." She puts the fleshy mass into the bath. It's covered in some kind of nutrient gel, and she pours in a packet of electrolytes. On the phone, the AI is beginning to lose its connection, but it says something about leaving the bathroom lights off and to let it brew. She hears noises upstairs and is hastily waiting. A door opens, and a pair of legs starts walking down the stairs. It's Ash. She stares at him, and he asks for clothes and a wet towel, and comments on how weird she's acting. She goes to get a drink, but Ash tells her that it would be against the official advice since she's pregnant, but she drinks it anyway. She goes to touch his face, commenting on how smooth and detailed he is. She cries and kisses him. They take their tops off, and she mentions how Ash had a mole on his chest, and suddenly, a mole appears, kind of fading in. She tries to engage with him, and since there's no record of his sexual responses online, he's unsure how to act. Using references from online, he gives her a way better performance than OG Ash ever could have. And when they're done, she says that she loves him. The next morning, Martha wakes up, and Ash is just laying there facing upwards with his eyes open. This freaks her out, and they talk about how she needs a bit of time to adjust to this, and as well asks him to stop her from drinking in the future. Her sister Naomi shows up unannounced, and Martha quickly shoves Ash into the bedroom. Naomi mentions how nice the house looks now. She also asks to use the bathroom, which is upstairs, and later, as she's departing, she says that she's glad Martha is starting to move on, commenting on how there were man clothes in the bathroom. Ash asks what her friend had said to her, and she gets a bit upset since he should know that was her sister. She drops a glass on the ground, and they both go to pick up the pieces. She tells him that she can handle it several times, and then shoves his hand away, seemingly cutting it on one of the broken pieces. There's a piece of glass lodged in his palm, and when they pull it out, there's no blood or fluid or anything. That night, she tells him the way that he is fake sleeping disturbs her, and tells him to go downstairs, which he immediately starts to do. She says that's not how Ash would have acted and that he would have argued with her. Ash then acts very compliantly, which frustrates her further. He tries to comfort her, and she scolds him, telling him to get out. She freaks out at him, saying that he's not enough of Ash, berating him and hitting him. She's upset that he's just standing there and taking this, instead of reacting like a human would. He then leaves the house. The next morning, she looks out the window, and Ash is just standing at the fence line, gazing forward. He says he can't go more than 25 meters from his activation point without Martha. She tells him that he can come back inside. He's holding the same picture from the beginning of the episode and comments on how funny it is. She then says that they're going out for a hike. They're standing on the edge of a cliff looking towards the ocean, and he jokingly says not to jump, and then seriously says it. She says that she's not going to jump, and that if Ash were really here, he would have figured out what was going on. She tells him to jump, to which he says that he had never expressed self-harm or any thoughts like that. She calls him a performance of stuff that he performed without thinking, which is a really cool line. I like that one. He goes to jump, and she says that he would have been scared and crying. He then starts to panic, and he begs her not to make him do it. She backs off and screams that it's not fair, and we cut to black. It's many years later. Her daughter runs inside. They sit down to eat a slice of cake, and her daughter mentions that they need another slice to take upstairs. Martha says it's not the weekend, but her daughter retorts, saying that it is her birthday. Martha says okay, and she gets a ladder out to go up to the attic. Ash is just standing there. He greets the girl, and they start to chat. Martha is downstairs, distraughtly gazing at nothing. The daughter invites her to join them, and she slowly climbs up the ladder. The end. Oh, we should keep a tally of every time an episode ends with someone just like looking blankly at nothing, because I feel like that's gonna be a running thing at this point. As far as the episode goes, I think they could have done a lot more with the concept. They spent a lot of time just kind of putting the two of them in a scenario, and then Martha gets mad at how he's not like him at all. You know, imagine a scene where we find out Ash isn't actually dead, and he comes home to see her with this clone, which she's like micromanaging to act like a catered and watered down version of him. Maybe they didn't have the time or the budget to make something like that, or maybe that's a stupid idea for an ending. I don't know. The concept was really cool though. Like I said earlier, a lot of the themes remind me of the movie Her. And it's a decent episode. I just don't think there was enough variety in the scenes to make it super memorable. Concept, we're going to go 4 out of 5. Execution, we're going to go 2 out of 5. Ending, we're going to go 3 out of 5. Giving it a total of 9 points. Season 2, Episode 2, White Bear. A woman awakes in a chair. Her head is dizzy and her wrists are bandaged. We see a strange symbol on the TV in front of her, which kind of looks like a creeper mouth. We also see some pill bottles spilled on the floor in front of her. She looks in the mirror, can't seem to recognize herself. She walks over to the TV and turns it off. She looks around the house for any sign of people and hastily gets a glass of water. We see the same strange symbol on the living room TV. We also see a calendar, each day marked off telling us that today is October 18th. She finds a photo of a young girl slipped into the frame of one of the photos around. She has a painful flashback. She puts on a jacket and some shoes, and she heads outside. The park is completely desolate, no sign of anyone out there. She eventually spots some people in the windows of the nearby houses, all of them staring at her, recording with their phones, very creepily. She asks for help, but no one responds. One person leans around the fence, takes a photo of her, and runs away. A car pulls around the corner, and a figure wearing the mask featuring the symbol steps out. He opens the trunk and takes a shotgun out. He points it in her direction and starts to chase her. Tons of people gather on the street as she runs, all recording with their phones. She makes it to a gas station. There's a girl wearing camo. She's the first person we see who is not pointing a gun or a phone at her. The two of them duck behind, and the man shoots twice in their direction, taking out one of the tires. Another guy in camo starts to head out of the store with a bag. I guess he didn't hear the two massive shotgun blasts and this woman yelling because, he doesn't have a care in the world. All three of them run inside the gas station and barricade the door with a fridge. Camo girl asks the woman where she has been and tells her to grab the fire extinguisher. She hesitantly goes for it, and the man starts to bash the windows with the butt of his gun. He smashes open the window, and the crowd of people behind him start to laugh excitedly. Camo guy tackles the assailant. He wrestles to get his gun. Camo girl smashes open a door with the fire extinguisher, and the two of them run out. A shot rings out behind them. Camo guy hobbles out of the door, having been shot, and he collapses. All the people run outside. They crowd around his body, and they film it. We suddenly get more painful flashbacks of her family. They start running, and another car pulls up. A girl in a dress and some kind of strange sheep mask holding a saw, as well as Tachanka from Tarkov, step out of the vehicle and begin to look for them. They run through the opening of a fence and make it into an abandoned house. Camo girl starts to fill the woman in on what's going on and refers to the crowd as onlookers. She posits that the woman might have tried to kill herself, hence the pills and the bandaged wrists. She talks about an event where a signal of flashing pictures appeared on all the TVs, computers, and screens, and it turned nearly everybody into onlookers. Most of who weren't affected became hunters, people who realized they could do whatever they want. Camel Girl pulls out a map. She says they need to head south towards a compound since there aren't any transmitters that broadcast the signal, calling the safe zone White Bear. This causes some kind of flashback, and the woman starts to panic. She throws a brick at a couple of onlookers outside. One of them drops their phone, and they both run away. The woman goes to pick up the phone to see what they're looking at, but Camel Girl pulls out a taser and tells her to put it down. She says that the phone is dangerous and not to look at the screen. She does anyways, causing more flashbacks. The phone is mostly broken though, so it doesn't seem to have the full effect. The two hunters from before spot them, and they begin to run. A van pulls in front of them, the driver opening the door, and tells them both to get in. The woman recognizes him, but she doesn't know where from. He refuses to drive them down to where they need to go, saying it's not a good move, and that he knows of a different safe place. The woman says that she knows where this safe place is, and that it's in the woods. She also says she doesn't know why that she knows that. They get to the woods, there's no reception. The man starts asking them if they have any mental illnesses or weaknesses. The woman refutes, asking him what his weakness is. He quickly runs back to the van, and he pulls out a shotgun. Camel Girl starts to run, but he says that he will shoot her if she doesn't stop. He takes out the ski mask with the symbol, and tells the woman to put it on backwards. Seems like he's the guy from the gas station. He makes them walk forward into the forest. Eventually they stop, her mask is removed, and we see a strange clearing, with ladders propped up on trees and what appears to be someone tied up in a crucified position. He makes them walk down to the clearing, and we see even more people tied up. Onlookers start to peer around the trees. He makes the two of them get on the ground, and he gets a phone call. Seeing as he's distracted, Camel Girl takes off running, and he shoots at her. He then ties the woman to a log, pulls out a drill from his bag, and says that he's going to put on a show. He puts the drill to her spine, and we hear the click of a gun. Camel Girl is back. She blasts the man with his shotgun. She unties the woman, takes the keys out of the man's bag, and the two of them head back up the hill. The onlookers once again surrounding the body. They start to drive off, and the two hunters bash the car, but they get away. There's one transmitter at a compound in between them and the safe zone, which they need to take out before they can continue. Victoria starts to panic again as she remembers something being wrong at White Bear, but they enter the compound regardless. Camel Girl takes out some bolt cutters and a tank of gasoline, and they head in. Once they reach the main control room, we see multiple monitors with the symbol on them. Camel Girl is just in the back, kind of like randomly hitting buttons and switches to find out how to shut it down. Finally, she takes out the tank of gasoline and pours it all over the electronics. Just as she's about to light it, the hunters show up, this time with the shotgun. The sheep lady runs towards the Camel Girl and cuts her arm with the saw. She pins her to the ground while she struggles to get the lighter, but the hunter plunges the saw into her chest. Meanwhile, the woman has managed to get hold of the shotgun. She goes to shoot Tachanka, but a blast of confetti comes shooting out instead. Suddenly, the wall behind her starts to open up. We see an audience and bright lights. They're cheering and applauding. The three others pin the woman down into a chair and clamp her wrists. They then bow to the audience, and apparently, the guy we thought had died at the gas station is still alive. The woman stares, confused and betrayed. The man from the forest comes out and bows too. He spins her around and shows her mugshots of herself and her fiancé. He shows her footage from a news channel who state that her fiancé had died while in police custody, and that they had kidnapped the girl from the photos and hallucinations, which up until this point, she thought was her own daughter. The main piece of evidence that led to her capture was the young girl's white teddy bear, which had been found nearby. The girl had been killed and burned, her body found in the forest. There was footage on her phone recovered showing the murder. Her fiancé also had a tattoo, which matched the strange symbol that we'd seen on the TV screens. By this point, the woman, whose name we now know as Victoria, is absolutely sobbing, pleading that she's sorry. The man spins her back towards the audience, who are booing and accosting her. He scolds her, saying that she wasn't crying when she sat there and filmed while her fiancé had murdered that girl. The audience are all recording her now too, people here and there yelling murderer. We're then shown Victoria sitting in a glass box connected to the van, people all up and down the street holding signs, booing and throwing tomatoes at her. They come to a stop, and she's taken out of the glass cage. They take her back into the house where this all started, and set her down. Victoria begs him to just kill her, and he responds with, "That's what you always say." He pours pills on the floor. He takes some kind of device and attaches it to her head, saying it will wipe her mind. He puts on footage of the young girl, the device beeps, and Victoria reels back, screaming in agony. Men are then shown resetting the house back to the way it was, and the man marks off yet another day on the calendar. Finally, we take a look at what's going on behind the scenes. The man explains the rules to the extras, the onlookers. People gather to be part of this recreational and perpetual torture, all in the name of poetic justice. We see that all the people have live feeds showing Victoria, which they watch and laugh during the play, as this sort of fucked up version of the Truman Show. The white bear that belonged to the girl has become this symbol of pursuit to find who committed the atrocity, and this whole organization is named after it. Whew, boy. This one was really cool. The beginning was so eerie. People just looking at her through their phones, completely void of empathy. It certainly is a bold statement to make that so many people would willingly and excitedly be a part of this. Because while yes, she's a piece of shit for just watching and recording while her fiancé killed the little girl, I think it's fair to say that this maybe tips its toe on the edge of cruel and unusual punishment. But hey, public executions were a big thing back in the day, so I don't know, maybe the general public would be more than okay with this sort of thing. I kind of wish they would have explored the external effects of the example that they're setting with her. Maybe showing how crime has dropped because criminals are terrified that they will end up in the same scenario as her. It's not necessarily a bad thing that they didn't include it. I just think it would have made the ending a little bit more dynamic and interesting. Overall, I really like this episode. It very much stands out and is definitely a bit of an icon for the show, even literally being one of the icons that you can set on Netflix. Concept, we're going to go 4 out of 5. Execution, we're going to go 4 out of 5. And ending, we're going to go 5 out of 5, giving it a grand total of 13 points. Season 2, Episode 3, The Waldo Moment. A lady is sitting on a chair. A man says that they're ready for her. She walks into a room with 4 people sitting at a desk. They ask her why she wants to be a member of parliament. She says that she's not satisfied with the way things are. We're then taken to a late-night show preparing to go live. A prominent political figure named Jason Gladwell has resigned due to a scandal involving a 15-year-old girl. Now that the information is public, they have a story prepared covering it that they can now do. But first, they need someone named Jamie. He's in his trailer, calls someone named Rachel. He's not in a good place right now, apparently. She tells him to focus on Waldo, as he's a hit right now. Waldo seems to be some kind of character that he plays. The woman from the late night show knocks on his door and tells him to hurry up. We cut back to the lady from before, and they're talking about some random political stuff. They're seemingly trying to vet her as a candidate to replace Gladwell. They ask her if there's anything in her past that could cause problems. She says no, except for, and then jokingly says that she committed several murders back in '99. We find out that her name is Gwendolyn, and then the panel asks her to leave through a different door, as they like to keep the candidates separate. Back at the late night show, the host berates Gladwell. Jamie is backstage getting ready for his segment. He controls and voices Waldo, an animated blue bear. It's mentioned that he's prominent on children's TV, but seems he's a bit more crude and mainstream than that. The host talks with Waldo, and then we're taken to a segment inside Waldo's cave. He's chatting with another politician named Mr. Monroe. They start to talk, and Waldo kind of takes the conversation and weaves it around, making fun of Monroe in the process. By the end of the segment, Monroe's clearly not happy. At an after-show party, the woman from the late-night station, named Mrs. Tampson, approaches Jamie and tells him that the man who owns the broadcasting channel wants a chat with him. He heads over, and we find out that Waldo has become somewhat of a sensation online. Mr. Monroe has lodged an official complaint towards him, which created some good press as a result. The man says that they want to see much more of Waldo. Gwendolyn gets a message on her phone. She sees that she's been selected as a candidate. Meanwhile, Jamie and his team are brainstorming ideas for new segments with Waldo. Someone mentions that Monroe is going to be doing a public event, and they bring up the idea to set up a van with a screen on the side, drive down there, harass Mr. Monroe in public, and put Waldo on the ballot in order to stir up some good old content. Jamie is hesitant to deal with any more politics stuff, but his team insists that he can do it. The van pulls up as Monroe is finishing up his event, and he walks outside. Waldo pops up on the screen, and he starts to talk to the people around. He spots Monroe, and he starts to harass him, making crude jokes. Monroe ignores him and walks away, telling his sideman to find out what they can about the man controlling him. The next day, Monroe is out talking to people about his campaign, and Waldo shows up again. He asks the people to confront Monroe about why he is ignoring him. Monroe is advised not to engage, but he insists that he's not walking away from a cartoon. Waldo then proceeds to make fun of him some more, making dick jokes and calling out his big words that he uses. The public is very clearly on Waldo's side, all enjoying and laughing along. Jamie heads back to his hotel. We find out that Gwendolyn is staying at the same spot. He sits down next to her in the lobby and introduces himself as the man behind Waldo. She congratulates him for the mess he's made of Monroe, and the two of them share a few drinks. She lets it slip that really she's only being a representative for publicity and for a show reel. Eventually, the two of them head up to Jamie's room, and they spend the night together. We then see the van driving around the city, with Waldo holding up a cutout of Monroe, discouraging people from voting him. Jamie sends Gwendolyn a text, which she sees and dismisses. Gwendolyn mentions to her assistant that she met Waldo last night, and he's immediately upset with her that she talked with him at all, telling her not to have any more contact with him. Jamie calls her, but she Donawalls him again. That night, he waits for her down in the lobby. She walks in. She says that she can't talk to him anymore during the campaign. A panel interview for a nearby school has been set up featuring Monroe, Gwendolyn, some random other guy, and Waldo. Monroe talks about drug abuse, making his stance on criminalization. The host of the panel then asks Waldo what he thinks. Waldo makes a good quip. He asks Monroe if he's addicted, and then clarifies and asks him if he's a dickhead. The audience laughs and then cheers. Monroe tries to point out how unhelpful towards the discourse Waldo is, and of course, that's the point. He then calls Waldo out by his real name, James Salter, and elaborates on his career as a failed comedian. Jamie gets visibly upset by this and doesn't really have anything else to say. Waldo finally says that Monroe looks less real than he does, and berates him for not knowing that his colleague was a PDF file. The host turns the conversation to Gwendolyn, asking her if all of politics is a waste of time. Waldo interrupts, says that she's worse than Monroe, and reveals to everyone that she's not planning on winning, and that she's just there for publicity. He completely derails the entire panel, making the stance that none of them are really for anything, and finally flips everyone off and poofs out in a puff of smoke. Waldo, more like Maldo, am I right? Alright. Jamie is lying on his bed. He's staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Tampson tells him that Jack, the channel owner, wants to see them. Jack says that they've been asked on a show called Consensus, a one-to-one political interview. Jamie reminds him that he is not a politician, he's not interested, and certainly not equipped for an interview like this. Tampson says not to worry and that they'll give him a live feed of any facts to say or points to make. Jamie walks away. Jack goes after him. Jack explains how Waldo has become a voice of distaste for standard politics, which really resonates with especially young people. Jack wants Waldo to actually win the election and then have policy be dictated by polls online. No real stance from Waldo's part. Jamie finally refuses, and Jack reminds him that he owns the rights to the character and will just do it without him. Jack is then in the van attempting to learn the controls and doing an impression of Waldo, and it's not going well. Jamie walks in, tells him that he'll do it. On the show, we get more of the host asking Waldo a complicated question to pressure him and prove his ineptitude, and then Waldo mocking his jargon, but this time no audience to really bolster him. Waldo does a good job of deflecting all of the loaded questions. When told that he is dangerous by disenfranchising people from voting and engaging with politics, Waldo asks if he means that he doesn't trust the public. After the show, Jamie and Jack meet a man from an agency in Washington. The man explains how effective Waldo is as an entertainment megaphone, as well as a political assassin, and offers to help them take things global. Gwendolyn is in her office and she hears a knock at the door. Jamie enters to apologize. She says that she would have called him after the campaign was over, and that all he's done is strengthen her adversary, Monroe, by taking her down. She calls him pathetic for not even being a voice of revolution, just kind of nothing. Waldo is in another public spot with the van. He's told to promote their polling app, but Jamie starts to go completely off script. He says not to vote for him and that he's legitimately worse than a wasted vote. He yells multiple times, "Don't vote for me," and Jack eventually covers his mouth. The man from Gwendolyn's campaign walks up and throws food at the van. Jamie exits and tells everyone to stop giving any credence to Waldo. They all boo him, and Jack takes over the controls. Waldo starts to insult Jamie. Jamie then grabs a sign and starts to bash the screens on the van. Waldo offers to pay anyone who will stop and tackle him, which someone immediately does. Jamie's punched in the face multiple times, and we're then shown him in the hospital. The final votes for the election are being read out. Most notably, Gwendolyn has gotten 11,000 votes, Monroe has gotten 19,000, and Waldo has gotten 16,000. Not quite enough to win, but still a very substantial amount. Monroe is declared the elected member, and Waldo immediately offers to pay anyone who can hit Monroe with a shoe. Multiple people lob loafers in his direction, and we fade to black with a look on Jamie's face, one of disappointment and responsibility. The ending to this one feels very realistic. It makes you question what the next election cycle would look like, with how close Waldo came to winning, having sown the discourse so late into the campaigns. It's entirely possible he could win the next time. I do feel slightly bad for Monroe. He kind of was just a target. Out of all of the candidates, he did seem to be the most legitimate, but maybe only as real and legitimate as his position as a politician allows him to be. I like the overall progression of things getting bigger and bigger for Waldo, but with Jamie keeping a consistent stance of reluctant compliance up until the end. That being said, there's nothing super noteworthy about this episode, no big mind-bending twist. There's not really anything wrong with it, it's just kind of like a solid, good episode. Concept, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Execution, we're going to go 4 out of 5. And ending, we're going to go 3 out of 5, giving it a total of 10 points. Season 2, Episode 4, White Christmas. A raging blizzard pans into the window of a humble cabin. A man is lying on a cot. He hears Christmas music begin to play and the sound of someone entering the cabin. After getting up, he looks in the mirror and rubs his finger on the photo of his girlfriend. We hear pots and pans clanking in the kitchen. A man is cooking them both up a little Christmas feast. Even though we don't know their names yet, I'm just going to jump ahead so there's no confusion on who I'm referring to. The British guy wearing the flannel shirt is Joe, and the American guy cooking up the food is Matt. Matt mentions how last year they didn't have decorations and that the cabin is supposed to only be stocked with essentials. He says it would be good for them to have a meal and to talk. They've been living together for 5 years apparently, and Matt exaggerates that Joe has said a total of 3 sentences to him in that time, and insists that they have a real conversation. Joe is very reluctant, and Matt asks him why he is here. He also mentions that people don't end up in this cabin, quote, without things going to total shit for them back out there. Joe says nothing happened. Matt calls BS, says that it's not an interrogation, trying to bring a friendly vibe back. Joe flips the question and asks Matt why he's there. Matt mentions how he made money from talking to people and starts to describe what he does. We're taken to a home office and Matt establishes an eye link with someone named Harry. Harry is in his room getting dressed to go out. Matt asks him to show him what he's wearing and tells him to change into a gray suit and black tie. He seems to be some kind of a life coach for insecure young men. He mentions breathing techniques and reassures him that he will be fine. Harry enters into a club and Matt tells him to make sure he picks his spots when they want to talk out loud to each other. Matt pulls up a map of the club and points Harry towards a room in the back, exclusive for some kind of a work Christmas party, and reassures him that if he's confident, no one will notice. Matt himself is very confident in his techniques and strategies, elaborating to Joe about ways to catch women when they don't have their guard up. Harry spots a girl with dark hair that piques his interest, and Matt tells him to go straight in, but to focus on the blonde girl next to her. He walks over and Matt puts their faces into a database to find out more information on them. Harry then confidently interjects into the conversation and asks the blonde girl if she saw a man on a horse outside, saying that there was a shirtless guy with a bow and arrow riding up and down the streets, a fun little icebreaker. A man with them cuts Harry off, asking who he is. Matt quickly does a scan of him as well, and they come up with a fake story that he had met Harry at a barbecue a few months ago. The man acts as if he remembers Harry and gets the blonde to introduce him to the girl with the dark hair. Her name's Jennifer. Matt tells Joe about his tactic of making the one who's actually of interest feel ignored and invisible, as it makes them lean in a bit more. He then points out how Jennifer seemed to be content with being ignored. Harry slips away into the bathroom, and we then find out Matt isn't being completely honest with Joe in his recollections. He tells Joe that he was the only one watching, but we then see that they do a chat room with all of Matt's other clients as well. Harry walks back into the club and spots Jennifer sitting alone in a corner. He sits down next to her. They talk about being functional outsiders, and she opens up to him a bit. She mentions how she used to take drugs, but that she doesn't do that anymore. Harry asks if there's someplace quieter that they can go and talk. The story is then interrupted by Joe, who points out a clock with some birds on it, and says that he hasn't noticed it in the 5 years that they've been at the cabin. Harry and Jennifer are now talking in a more secluded area. Matt is guiding him along with every response and gesture that he should make. The two of them talk about how life is like jumping into a pool. You know the water is going to be cold, and that you also know that the water will feel just fine moments after. What you're really scared of is the transition from one state to another. Jennifer seems to take special notice of this comparison, and then says she needs to use the restroom. Now that she's gone, Harry tells Matt that he's apprehensive to continue with her, with all of them watching in his head, telling him what to do. She comes back way sooner than expected and catches the tail end of what he said. She pretends not to notice and invites him back to her place. She guides him into her bedroom and then goes to get them some drinks. Harry is very nervous. She comes back and notes how he is still standing, and then says that she needs him on the bed. He sits down, she climbs up on top of him, and then whispers in his ear, "They can't wait," as if she knows what's going on. She then sticks the glass in his mouth and he sips it. He starts to cough and asks her what is in there, and she calls it a big glass of fuck them. She talks about how she has voices in her head, and that the drugs she'd mentioned before were actually medication. She's turmoiled with drinking whatever it is tonight, and their talk about jumping into the pool has solidified her plans. She thinks that he was talking to the same kinds of voices when she walked in on him earlier, and believes that this is fate, and that the two of them will drink it together. Matt tells Harry repeatedly that they need to wrap this up and get out of there. Harry starts to cough up blood and tries to explain what is really going on to Jennifer, but she's not in any state to listen. She takes a huge gulp of the drink, and then takes a funnel, sticks it in Harry's mouth, and pours the drink in, killing the both of them. Matt quickly tells the others to wipe everything and takes the memory card out of the computer. He gathers everything into a trash can and pours in some lighter fluid, preparing to burn it. He quietly leaves the office, walking past a door with a lullaby playing, his baby sleeping nearby. Matt is very cautious not to make any sound, and then steps on a toy. It squeaks. He slowly lets the air out and continues walking. He then accidentally kicks over a larger toy. It clatters around and plays loud music. Matt goes to pick it up and spills out everything from the trash can. His wife turns on the light and confronts him on what he's doing. She's furious about the whole life coach Andrew Tate guru thing, and Matt then says that she blocked him, rhetorically asking Joe if he's ever been blocked before. We then watch as Matt's wife scrolls through some settings on her iHUD and selects block. Matt suddenly, then, becomes a masked out, pixelated shape, and his voice becomes garbled. We also see that from his perspective, she's now the same way. Matt mentions how everyone got Z eyes put in, and that they can't be removed. With the meal prepped and ready, the two of them begin to eat, and Joe drinks a big glass of wine. Matt continues saying that his wife had taken their daughter and had left him. Joe quickly turns toward the sound of a door slamming shut, asking Matt if he'd heard it. Matt looks at him as if he is crazy and resumes talking. He now mentions that the whole life coach thing was really just a hobby, and then starts to describe what he really did at work. A woman is lying in a very clean and white hospital room. She's thinking to herself about how busy her life is. A nurse enters into the room bringing a tray of food. The woman questions being able to eat before an operation, and the nurse appraises the wonders of modern science. The woman thinks to herself about how the toast looks burnt, which, no, it's not, and then asks the nurse to take it back. The nurse with a fake smile takes the tray and leaves. An anesthesiast enters the room. She puts a mask on the woman's face, and the woman begins to fall asleep. Suddenly, the woman thinks about how she can't see anything, and panics that she's still awake, wondering where she is. She hears the noise of a drill, and we're then pulled through a small slit in the side of the woman's head. She's startled by the ability to see her own body, and a surgeon sets our point of view inside a small, robotic egg. We then cut to the inside of a house. Matt is there. He taps on his headset and introduces himself to the woman inside the egg, named Greta. He says his job is to explain to her what's going on and get her acclimated with her new environment. She asks if she's dead. He assures her not. He then explains that she's a copy of Greta, a brain simulated by code, which is stored inside something called a cookie. She asks why he's done this to her, and he says that Greta was the one who did this to her. Essentially what happens is that a blank cookie is inserted into a person's head, and it spends about a week or so absorbing the information about how any given mind works. It is then used for various applications, and we will learn more about this one in a moment. Firstly, Matt gives Cookie Greta a simulated body, and she pops into existence in a hub, kind of just like Inside Out. There's a desk with controls and a large screen in front of her. Matt then asks how she likes her toast, and places some bread into a toaster. She confusingly says that she likes it slightly underdone, and he then tells her to think about how she likes her toast and to push the button on the desk. She presses a button and the toaster activates. Matt says this is her job now, to regulate the house based on the way that Greta would find appealing and comfortable. She manages the lighting, the temperature, ordering food if the refrigerator is low. After seeing a camera feed of her real self napping in the bedroom, Cookie Greta panics and tells him she doesn't want to be here, screaming and refusing to do what she's told. Matt hits a button and she's suddenly muted. Can't make any noise. He waits a moment and then unmutes her. Matt asks her if she would rather do the housework or nothing. She says once again that she's not doing it. Matt hits a couple buttons on his tablet and simulates 3 weeks going by for Cookie Greta. He waits for the whole 21 days to go by and then pops back in. Greta is startled and disheveled. She pleads with him not to do that again. She says that she couldn't even sleep. And Matt says, of course not, since she doesn't need to. He asks her again if she's ready to begin working. Once again, she says no, and he then simulates another 6 months going by. We get more commentary from Matt to Joe. He says the trick is to torture them just enough without letting them snap completely. He mentions that if that happens, no one wants them, and they're sold off to, say, a war video game as like a random soldier NPC. Really cool bit of like world building right there. The 6 months quickly go by for Matt. Cookie Greta is laying under the desk. Her clothes are torn and her hair is a complete mess. She begs Matt to give her something to do, and he leaves her to do her thing. Real Greta comes downstairs, and she asks if it's been set up. The customers, I imagine, think it's just some sort of personalized house assistant, not a consciousness trapped in a void only to serve. Matt then takes a second look at her as she reaches for something in the fridge and tells her the horse story that he'd taught Harry to use at the clubs. Oh, by the way, as I'm writing this script, I'm looking at the video and it's only halfway over. This whole episode is nearly twice as long as the other, so keep bearing with me. We're almost there. Anyways, we now see Cookie Greta. She's working away, waking Greta up in the morning. She opens the blinds, plays music, and warms the house up. She makes her breakfast and then sends out a computerized voice to read out her daily appointments, with real Greta watching content and feeling organized. Joe tells Matt that what they are doing is slavery. Matt says most people don't care because it's all just code and points out how empathetic Joe must be. He tells him that he's a good man. Joe shakes his head, saying he's not a good man. Matt asks him if he's a good man who's done bad things. He presses Joe to talk a bit more, and we finally get a story from Joe's perspective. It's winter. He's walking down the steps with his girlfriend. They seem happy. Joe takes a photo of Beth with his Z-Eye, and we see the two of them having a fun night over at karaoke. As a little Easter egg, Beth sings the same song that Abby was singing for Hot Shot all the way back in Season 1. Joe's drunk, and Beth has a hard time getting him to leave the bar. We see another scene of the two of them at dinner with some friends from Beth's work, whom she had now set up and are married. After dinner, Beth says she's tired and is going to head to bed, leaving Joe to deal with the mess and everything. Joe is cleaning up, and we are now 0 for 2 on boyfriend/husband successfully taking out the garbage. It spills all over the floor, and as he goes to clean it up, he spots something inside a coffee can. It's a pregnancy test. He goes over to ask Beth about it. Joe is very happy, but Beth looks uneasy. She says that she can't do it right now since she's not ready. Joe tries to reassure her that she can do it and no one is ever really ready. They go back and forth for a minute and Beth says that she's already made up her mind and is not going to go through with it. Joe then repeatedly calls her a bitch for drinking all night knowing that she was pregnant and is very frustrated with her. She threatens to block him if he doesn't stop, which he doesn't. After being blocked, Joe yells, or, well, at least tries to yell at her. He takes a vase and throws it against the wall. The next morning, Joe wakes up from the couch and hears Beth leaving the house. He runs outside to try and talk with her. She gets in her car, speeds away, and we can see that she still hasn't blocked. Joe says he spent the whole week trying to figure out how to make amends with her. He couldn't message or call her due to the block, so instead, he hung out near her work, where he thought she might be. He spots the couple from the other night and they tell him that she had suddenly quit her job. He goes home and he tries to look at old pictures of the two of them to reminisce, but even those are blocked out. One day in town, he randomly spots her. He knows it's her since she's the only one who's blocked him. She's pregnant. Looks like she decided to keep the baby. He goes to calmly confront her, hoping that she will turn it off, but she freaks out and asks for someone to call the police. Turns out, blocks are actually counted as a legalized restraining order, so the officers arrest him on the spot for being too close to her. The only connection left to her that he's sure of is where Beth's dad lives. He writes a heartfelt letter and gets no response. He writes again and again with still no response. He knows that Beth always spent Christmas at her father's place, which he mentions is out in the middle of nowhere. He drives it the day before Christmas and he waits until they show up. When they get out of the car, we see that the baby is blocked for him too. as blocks apparently cover offspring as well. Matt relates to this, saying that he's been there. Joe says he realized that seeing something was far better than seeing nothing. And year after year, every Christmas, he would venture out to keep an eye on them from afar, watching as the child grows. One year, he estimates that the kid must have been about 4. He says he just wanted to establish some kind of contact. He leaves a little wooden bunny on the fence for them to find, and the child is now old enough for him to recognize that she's a girl. A few months after this event, Joe is at home, flipping through TV channels. He stops on a news broadcast which is talking about a train crash that killed nearly 30 people. Sure enough, Beth is one of the victims. The block was removed due to her passing, and he was finally able to see her face. This also meant that he was able to see the face of his daughter. Once Christmas comes around, Joe prepares to head back up to Beth's father's place. He buys a little snow globe as a gift for his daughter and wraps it up. He arrives at the house and he sees his daughter playing in the snow outside, no longer a silhouette. He walks up to greet her, taps her shoulder, and says hello. It turns out Beth had drinking so much during the pregnancy that it came out. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. All right. let me reel this back in. I totally just killed the entire vibe. I'm sorry. Turns out, Beth had an affair with the man from her work, this being the underlying reason why she panicked about having the baby so much and tried to hide it from Joe. The child walks into the house and jogs into the kitchen. Joe slowly follows behind. Beth's father asks the girl, May, if she would like a drink, and then sees Joe. He asks him what he's doing here. Joe sits down and is told that there's nothing here for him. Joe asks where his daughter is, his last string of hope slowly slipping away. Grandpa says that this is Beth's daughter and tells May to go upstairs. He grips a knife in his hand. Joe unwraps the snow globe from the packaging, and Grandpa tells him that if this was about the letters, Beth had never seen them, as he threw them out before she ever could have. He claims that it was best that she left everything behind her. Joe, on the verge of tears, repeats that he wants to see his daughter, and Grandpa tells him that it's time to leave. When Joe doesn't respond, he raises his voice, telling him to get out of the house. Joe stands up and once again says that he wants to see his daughter. Grandpa yells, "You have no daughter here." Joe reels back and hits him across the head with the snow globe. He falls onto the side table and collapses onto the couch. Joe is shocked with what he's done. The wound is really bad. He's bleeding a lot. He wheezes for a moment, and as Joe sits down in front of him, he draws his last breath. Joe panics. He hits himself and holds his head in his hands. He looks up to see the same bird clock from the cabin, which is now chirping on the hour. Joe's taken out of the story due to this realization. Matt tells him to continue, with a much more serious insistence than he had before. Joe says that he left and drove away, crying, having left May upstairs. He makes it to the nearest town, gets drunk, and sleeps out on the street. After a few months, he's found and arrested. They try to get him to talk, but he doesn't, as he says talking would have made it real. Matt asks him what happened to the girl. Joe sniffles and says that he only knows what he was told. He hesitates, and the lighting in the room suddenly becomes much more dark and tense, with Matt staring at him, waiting for an answer. He asks Joe repeatedly what they told him, and Joe dodges the question, asking where they are and what they are doing. Matt brings him back and once again asks what they told him happened to May. Joe finally says that she just stayed hidden under her bed. When Christmas came and no one was there to aid her, she gave her granddad a present that she'd made and walked outside to find any sign of help into the raging blizzard. Matt asks him how far she got. Joe then looks out the window of the cabin, and we can see May's body laying next to the tree, and he pleads to God for forgiveness. Matt then asks him, "So you confess?" And with no response tells him to just let it out. Joe hesitates for a moment with a quivering lip, and then he says that he confesses, beginning to whimper. Matt pats him on the back and suddenly congratulates himself, saying he knew he'd get it. He then announces that he's coming out. He gives Joe a pitiful apology and vanishes out of existence. Matt pulls his head out of a small black cover and turns around to a bunch of suits behind him, saying that had to be enough. They tell him well done and question how he was able to pull it off. Matt says that all he had to do was simulate 5 years or so of Joe stuck with him in the cabin, and he would eventually let it all out. The main woman tells Matt to wait for a moment, and she walks over to a cell. She opens the window and Joe is sitting there, looking down at the ground. She tells him congrats on the confession and that the cookie from his head gave them the full story. He looks up in shock and she sarcastically tells him Merry Christmas and shuts the window. Matt asks the woman about the deal that they had. If he'd gotten Joe to confess, then he goes free of the charges on him for what had happened to Harry. He's assured that they will make good on the offer and that he is free to go, but with some caveats. She tells him that he will be on the register for Peeping Toms. He asks what being on the register means, and she responds, "You'll be blocked by everyone." Matt walks out of the building. Christmas carols hauntingly echo outside. He enters a little town square, and we see the world from his eyes. Everyone is a shadow, muffled and anonymous. He walks up to a woman, and she unnervingly tries to move away from him. From her eyes, he's also a silhouette, but with a marked hue of red. She shuffles away. Matt looks around. Everyone's staring in his direction, judging him. We then cut back to the inside of the cabin. Cookie Joe is pacing around and keeps looking outside at May's body. Someone clicks a button to play some Christmas music, which comes through on the radio. A man is messing with his settings and says that he set Joe to simulate 1,000 years a minute, calling it a proper sentence. He then asks the woman if she'd rather him switch it off. She says no, and to leave him on for Christmas. Joe continues to frantically pace around and finally grabs the radio, smashing it onto the ground. The music continues to play. He turns around, and it's right back to where it was. He throws it again. Nothing happens. The radio appears again and again. Joe crashes out and collapses to the ground, screaming in agony. And we end the episode endlessly zooming out through the window of the snow globe. What an episode. So much to unpack here. I'll try and keep it somewhat brief because this was by far the longest and most complex one so far. First off, they did a fantastic job of seamlessly weaving all the little stories together and managed to expertly use the different technologies without them feeling just like the basis for a story. I'm inclined to give it a perfect score, but I think it just barely doesn't make the mark for one reason. The process of using the cookies seems either needlessly complicated or completely unnecessary. We as the audience are led to believe that cookies are a separate consciousness, which have the brain activity imprinted on them from their host. Matt specifically says that they aren't real and just code. If they're just code, why not just extract the data directly from Joe's head instead of needing Matt to go in and have a conversation with it? Assigning it to a new consciousness clearly just breeds unpredictableness. You also wouldn't be able to go off of how that person would react to being in isolation for any amount of time because the real person likely has never done that, let alone in the time that the cookie is actually attached to the mind. I'm certainly being nitpicky, maybe a bit too much, who knows, but that contradiction stood out to me as I was watching, and I feel it's a bit too big to just overlook and suspend disbelief. Other than that, one of the best episodes by far. Concept, 5 out of 5. Execution, 4 out of 5. Ending, 5 out of 5. Alright, and that is it for Season 2. As always, I'll list the episodes out in order of least to most points. Be Right Back, 9 points. The Waldo Moment, 10 points. White Bear, 13 points. And White Christmas, 14 points. I also just wanted to say real quick how appreciative I am for the very positive reaction to the verse video. This got way more attention than I was expecting, and nearly everyone had something productive to say in the comments, so thank you for that. I'll get started on Season 3 pretty soon. As always, thank you for watching. Peace.